Hi, readers. The other night I was having this pretty interesting conversation, and it started out as a discussion about a character in the movie Frozen, which I know a lot of you have seen. And the person that I was having this conversation with was trying to prove to me that Elsa is the best problem solver in all of the fairy tales and movies that we've seen. And I said, prove it to me. What kind of evidence do you have from that movie to prove that she's the best problem solver? And she said that, Elsa is practicing trying not to freeze things. And then by the end, she figures it out and unfreezes the entire kingdom. And she said that makes her a super duper problem solver. And I said, hold the phone on that for a moment because, if we journey back to some of those classic fairy tales, like the ones that I went to the movie theaters to see when I was a third grader, Cinderella was a pretty good problem solver too. So then, of course, my friend said, prove it. And I said, well, Cinderella didn't really have very many friends, and she didn't have someone who was helping her. She didn't have a sidekick. And then when someone finally comes along to help her, she knows what to ask for. And do you remember when she was supposed to be home by midnight? I mean, she just barely made it, even with all of the obstacles in her way. And I think that makes her a better problem solver. Now, let me tell you that it doesn't actually matter who in that conversation was right and who was wrong. What matters is that we were able to really kind of take a deeper look at some of these characters that we know and describe them using evidence from the text, which in our case happened to be movies. And I started thinking about other areas where I know people using evidence from text, and we do that all the time in our reading, right? So today I want to show you and kind of talk to you about how we can have debates, like little mini, totally respectful, enjoyable, and interesting arguments when we're talking about two different characters and always returning to the text to provide some evidence. So I was thinking about our most recent two characters, Opal and Diamond, and I was trying to think, if my friend and I were having that conversation about who's a better problem solver between those two characters, what kind of evidence would I have? What would my thoughts be, and what could I base them on? What position would I be taking? And I decided after thinking about these two characters that I think probably Opal is a better problem solver. And once I make my decision on what my position is, I must go back to the text. So let's take a look at what I found. So here is where Opal has a problem, and it is that she wants to know more about her mom because she's missing her, right? And she's pretty nervous about talking to Preacher about it, so she kind of enlists Winn-Dixie's help. And listen to how clever she is and how brave she has to be to solve this problem. Daddy, I said real quick before I lost all my nerve, I've been talking to Winn-Dixie. Is that right? The preacher said. He scratched Winn-Dixie's head. I've been talking to him, and he agreed with me that since I'm 10 years old, you should tell me 10 things about my mama. Just 10 things, that's all. The preacher stopped rubbing Winn-Dixie's head and held real still. I could see him thinking about pulling his head back into his shell. One thing for each year I've been alive, I told him, please. Wow, that is perfect problem solving right there if you ask me. She's nervous about it, so she could certainly avoid the whole problem altogether. She enlists the help of a sidekick, Winn-Dixie, and she kind of perseveres. As soon as she notices he's pulling his head back into his shell, she comes back at him and isn't just saying, tell me everything about my mom. She very cleverly says, I'm 10 years old, one thing for each year, that's all I want. But, that's just one part of the story. And we've been working really hard on our persuasive writing, speeches, and I don't think any of you have just one reason to persuade an audience. So I went back to the text and look at this other piece of evidence I found. So this, of course, is a part of our text, even though it's only 2 pages where Opal actually is confronting 2 problems, right? Winn-Dixie has run into Gloria Dumpsyard, who at this point Opal has yet to meet, and the Dewberry Boys are really kind of teasing her. Winn-Dixie, I called. But he kept on going faster and hopped a gate and went into the most overgrown jungle of a yard that I had ever seen. You better get your dog out of there, Dunlap said. The witch will eat that dog, Stevie said. Shut up, I told them. I got off my bike and went up to the gate and hollered, Winn-Dixie, you better come on out of there. But he didn't. She's probably eating him right now, Stevie said. He and Dunlap were standing behind me. She eats dogs all the time. Get lost, you bald-headed babies, I said. Hey, said Dunlap, that ain't a very nice way for a preacher's daughter to talk. He and Stevie backed up a little. I stood there and thought for a minute. I finally decided that I was more afraid of losing Winn-Dixie than I was of having to deal with a dog-eating witch, so I went through the gate and into the yard. Readers, right here, I am learning a lot about Opal's problem-solving abilities. First of all, she's able to kind of stop, pause, and figure out what is the most important to her, and really kind of drum up enough courage to go after that. The other problem that I notice she solves is she kind of quiets, dismisses, disregards the Dewberry Boys, and goes for what she needs as far as solving the problem is. So those are my pieces of evidence that I would consider when I would be taking the position of Opal being the better problem solver. And here are these awesome steps for being a successful debater after you've gone to the text, of course. First, we're going to state our position. Opal is a better problem solver. One part that shows this is, first I need to say the part. And I know that that made her a great problem solver because she was nervous and super clever in getting her answers in a way that Preacher really couldn't say no to her, right? Another part that shows this is when Dixie runs into Gloria Dump's yard. And why was that a good example of her problem solving? Because she figured out what was most important to her, built up the courage, and dismissed those Dewberry Boys. Now, I would kind of go full circle with this if I were in a debate with someone about Diamond and say, you know, they could say some things about Diamond too. Like, well, Diamond is working on solving her problem. She eats with the 3 T's. She talks to Free. But as we've kind of learned through these chapters, Diamond Daniel is very confident, right? She knows who she is. She knows who she should care about. She knows that she's not concerned with what other people think of her. And so she kind of already has that level of courage that Opal hasn't really had a chance to build up. She's working on it, but she kind of comes in with sort of a heavy heart, missing her mom. She comes off as a little bit more of a sensitive character. So my challenge to you today is to try these mini debates through an assignment, and then you might get a chance to practice them live with a friend when you come to your reading class tomorrow. So here's what the assignment looks like. You are going to decide between Opal and Diamond which character is more bold, right? We have already identified that their personalities are pretty open book. They don't shy away from their feelings. They share their emotions. So now that we know that that's a similarity between them, I want you to decide who is more bold. Tell me what your position is. Name a part in the story, and then why that proves your point. And then, as we've discovered, one reason is not going to be enough to persuade someone in a debate. So think about another example you have in the text. Say the part and describe why. And you'll type right in these boxes. Then, as kind of a fun extension, if you're interested, this is optional, but you can choose a second debate to practice before you go live in your classroom. This is sort of a fun, maybe silly twist on debating. Between the Big Bad Wolf and the 3 Little Pigs and Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, which character is greedier? Or If you're more into gaming, you can try to debate between the games Among Us and Minecraft, which requires more problem solving. So, this is going to take a little bit of a different spin here when you are challenged to describe to your teachers what you have to do in those games that causes you to solve more problems. Can't wait to see your debate skills.